Hi, and welcome to the Planet Driven Brands podcast. In this show, we will be discussing with our guests how brands they represent can help in the drive to build a better, more sustainable and safer planet. We will highlight brands as drivers for change and the role they play as influencers. How will brands positively impact the planet and its environment? This is what we're going to find out. Do brands actually have any responsibility to change? The Planet Driven Brands podcast, episode 7. Our guest today is Tina Fegent, and we're going to be talking about how sustainability is changing marketing procurement. Hi Tina, thanks for joining our show. I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi Nick, well thanks for inviting me. I'm Tina Fegent, a marketing procurement consultant. One of the first many years ago, like 28 years ago, to work in marketing procurement. So I've always specialised in marketing and I've worked client side at Cellnet, GSK and Orange. And then I worked for 2 advertising agencies, Grey and Lowe. So uniquely, I've worked on both sides of the fence. And for the last 15 years, run my own consultancy firm, mainly working with clients. So working on, strategic marketing procurement projects, consultancy, mentoring, and also work for some agencies as well, and helping them better understand procurement as well.
So let's get straight into brands. Should they, and indeed are they, taking any responsibility for helping the drive to a better planet?
I mean, I've been, when I started digging into this, into sort of sustainability, from, not just from a marketing procurement point of view, but from a general point of view, it's absolutely massive. And what prompted it, actually, it was an interview that David Weldon, he was interviewing Sir Martin Sorrell, and Sir Martin said that S4 Capital tender they got an RFP, to have to use our acronyms in procurement, 40% of the scoring was sustainability, which I was really surprised about. And I thought, I need to look into that. And actually, I've found all sorts of initiatives going on, including one called the Sustainable Procurement Pledge, which was set up by 2 high-profile CPOs who are actually looking across the supply chain. Because obviously, whilst I'm looking at marketing and hence working with Agri and looking at when producing film content, can we do it from a better point of view? But obviously, you can imagine those procurement working in big brands where they're manufacturing, obviously they do need to look at not just their carbon footprint, but the use of paper, the use of water, for example. So from a procurement point of view, literally this year, there is a really big focus on it, which is interesting because there's also things like diversity and inclusion,
Absolutely.
Things like modern slavery. So, actually, I'm not trying to get the tiny violin out for procurement, but actually there are so many initiatives going on. And that's the one that does worry me is, where can we concentrate our efforts best? But yes, for the first time, I think this year, I've seen so many of my clients and so much in the procurement press about sustainability in the supply chain.
It's interesting you say that this change is really only becoming more apparent in the last year. Why are they often so slow on the uptake, in your opinion?
It's a good question because I'm also, with my other hat on, part of the Conscious Advertising Network, and that's about getting brands to sign up to 6 manifestos like misinformation and children's wellbeing, and that's been really slow to take off. And actually, I think it just takes time. I actually had a call with an agency this morning, a big UK-based creative and media agency structure, and they were interested in talking about both AdGreen and the Conscious Advertising Network, but they've said they have to balance that with everything else as well. So I think, agency or client side is, there are so many initiatives, not especially in the last year because of the pandemic.
Brands and their agencies have enormous purchasing power. How can they better use it as a force of good?
Be aware of it. So obviously, you've got people like Saul saying they're going to be net carbon zero by 2025. And I actually, we put that on LinkedIn, I actually tagged him and said, have a look at AdGreen, for example. So I think talking to a brand this morning, they actually felt that they and their agencies talk a lot about it, but actually haven't done much about it. So I'm hoping that post-pandemic life starts to get back to normal. I think it's been other priorities, I think, Nick, is what I'm probably saying.
Yeah.
I think it's always been there and we know about it. Also, I think the other thing is who has responsibility for it. And we had a talk from our procurement meeting, trade body meeting last year, from a guy who was so passionate about sustainability, recycling, etc. But he was trying to get that level of engagement with who in an organisation. And I think that's some of the issue is you might have, a really keen person at that level, but actually they need to be senior enough. So how many people have got chief sustainability officers? I'm sure we're starting to see them, or chief. So I think we've struggled with that with my Conscious Advertising Network hat on, who to engage with.
Yes.
And I think that is part of it. So I think that's why I'm really pleased to see things like this sustainable procurement, this SPP organisation, and
Yeah.
trying to raise the profile in procurement to say we've all got a job to look at the supply chain, and actually we've all got responsibility to empower and equip to have the tools to actually look at those UN goals, as you said.
It is definitely being driven by the younger copywriters,
Yeah.
creatives out there that really, really want their agency to do it. But of course, agencies as part of big groups have still got profits to make and they've still got people to pay.
It is difficult, and obviously with the demise of office space as we used to know it as well. But for me, it's great to see agencies adopting it, and I think agencies have probably adopted it a bit quicker. But brands have to, clients have to, and that's harder. If you're a manufacturing organisation, you've got to look across your whole supply chain.
Absolutely. I think it's easier for, say, and I work a lot in the food industry, and it's easier for food companies to go, okay, we'll get our cereals from whatever, and we'll be a bit more plant-based. But it's probably harder for a bank or for any a car manufacturer, et cetera, to set off with those aims, knowing that they've been told that they have to get rid of petrol engines by the end of 2030. They're probably scrabbling around, panicking to make sure that their electric engines are going to work well. Now, is that sustainable work?
Yeah, but also I think it's the cost. I always remember, years ago when you could get that, what's it called, that FSC paper, when you were buying copy of paper or buying marketing print. Okay, It might be FSC, it's more expensive. So, and loads of procurement clients say that, to say, okay, you want to be sustainable in that way. Do you know there's a 30% cost because of X, Y, and Z? What do you want, Mr. MD, Mrs. CEO? So I think that's a really interesting dynamic about that. Is the price of being sustainable, it hits your profit margin, and can you then pass it on to the consumer?
I am so interested though, because we've talked about money, and let's face it, your job existed, I guess, because you were able to help save whoever you're working for money within their chain of making adverts or whatever it is that they might be doing. Is it right for you, therefore, to push back and say, are you prepared to pay more to be more sustainable?
I think what I'm starting to see is it is now involved in a scoring criteria. So exactly like you said earlier about how cheap. So when the Modern Slavery Act came out quite a few years ago, there was quite an outcry from, if you go to shops like Primark and you're buying that T-shirt for £1, well, have you thought of the person that's making it? So in terms of clothing and shoes, obviously, as well. So from a procurement point of view, we've sort of learned to manage that. So I think we're at the start of it. There are actually saw a chain of emails this week from a lot of procurement people that I work with about using these third-party suppliers, where these are marketing procurement buyers. They're starting to invest in using these third parties who will validate these environmental sort of sustainability credentials of third parties. So I think what we'll see this year is it being on scoring sheets more. So I think this year more people are starting to talk about it and there's awareness of it. But I think, it just takes time to get action, and we'll probably see that in future years. But I think for the moment, I'm not saying it's a tick box because it's not, but it's on the list when you're doing an agency selection. Are they doing anything more than that at the moment? So not yet, but we'll do.
When the CMO and the creative director go, we really need to shoot this in Barbados, what's the reply?
Well, have you heard of CGI? I was listening to a Clubhouse room, one of my new things the other day, and someone was saying about using AI to create like influencers and sort of stuff like that. You just think, oh my God, it's just so amazing, isn't it?
What advice would you give to brands and or agencies setting up now in regards to where sustainability should sit on what they're doing?
I think learn, educate yourself, be it using a third party to come in and help you, to be it that you're bound to, as we said, young people, who are really keen on this subject. So I think really invest the time to learn about it. There is a lot going on and a lot of initiatives, but this is probably one, this is what I think one of the most important ones there is. So I think perhaps look at homegrown talent to be that focal point, because that's really key. Once you've got that focal point, and then you need to get to that tipping point, and then it's sort of networking. And it's not just having decaffeinated coffee or recycled toilet paper, is it? It is thinking about the way they work and stuff like that. So that's what I would say is invest in training, invest in education, and probably use people that are on the ground in your organisations that are so passionate about it, as we know the younger generation are. To harness that and to utilise it. If not, obviously, you can look at third parties. But I think invest in the time to know about it and keep on top of it. Is being on the forefront of it.
I think you're absolutely right. But I think that's really interesting. And thanks so much for that. I'm just going to go and check that my decaffeinated coffee and my bamboo toilet paper is still in the cupboard and feel very smug about myself, seeing as you've just mentioned
I'm going to go and feed my cat. But actually, I then wash up the cat food pouches now, put them in a recycled bag, and then I put them in the boot of my car to then drive to a recycling place every month, because the cat food pouches are just the worst.
They are.
So I'm doing that, and my crisp packets, actually.
Well done. So we're feeling particularly good about ourselves.
We are.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Tina. Thank you.
Speak to you soon. Take care, Nick.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you, Tina. Thank you ever so much for that insight into the changing face of procurement. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. The Planet Driven Brands podcast is the brainchild and copyright of Nick Jones and is broadcast in partnership with theplanetsagency.com. Planets Agency is a partnership of consultants and communications experts. We build planet-driven brands. During the series of shows, we'll be hearing from more experts and we would love for you to be involved. Please do comment or come back to us with questions. We'll be happy to engage. If you wish to be notified when our episodes are broadcast, please subscribe on the website. If you'd like to be part of the show, we'd love to hear from you. We look forward to many more entertaining episodes. Thanks again for listening.